My parents demanded that I give my house deposit to my sister because she needed it more, but I later found out why. I still remember the exact way my mother said it, like it was the most normal request in the world. "We need you to transfer your house deposit to your sister. She needs it more than you right now." My sister was sitting beside her, silent, scrolling on her phone like this had nothing to do with her. My father wouldn't even look at me. That alone made my stomach drop. This wasn't a small amount. It was everything I had saved for 5 years, my future, my escape, and they were asking me to hand it over like it was spare change. At first, I thought it had to be a joke, but no one laughed, and the weirdest part was the urgency. My mother kept repeating that it had to happen today, like if I didn't agree immediately, something terrible would happen. I asked what my sister needed it for. My voice cracked halfway through the sentence. My sister finally looked up and said, "It's complicated," then went back to her phone. That's when I knew something was wrong, because my sister never used to be complicated. She used to be the one everything was simple for, and I was always the one expected to adjust. But this time they were asking me to give up my entire life plan, and they weren't even explaining why. My father finally spoke, saying my sister was going through something serious and that I would understand later. That phrase hit me harder than anything else. Understand later. Like I was supposed to blindly hand over years of sacrifice on a promise of future clarity. I told them no. The room went silent in a way that felt heavier than shouting. My mother's face changed immediately, not anger yet, something worse. Disappointment mixed with disbelief, like I had broken a rule I was never told existed. "You're really going to do this to your sister?" she asked. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a request. It was an expectation I had already failed. And somehow I was the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. I left the room shaking. But what I didn't know yet was that this wasn't just about money. It was about something they had been hiding from me for months, something I only started noticing after that night. The next morning, I woke up to 5 missed calls from my mother. No messages, just calls. My sister didn't contact me at all, which was unusual. She usually would have at least sent something passive-aggressive or guilt-laced. Instead, silence. I tried to go to work, but I couldn't focus. Every time I looked at my bank app, I felt physically sick. That deposit was my only safety net, my rent security, my future down payment. By lunchtime, my father texted me, "We need to talk, don't be selfish." That word again, selfish, it felt rehearsed, like they had already decided the label for me. When I got home that evening, the atmosphere was different. My sister wasn't there. Only my parents waited for me in the living room like I was walking into an intervention. My mother didn't waste time. "She's going to lose her apartment," she said. That was new. I asked what happened. My father answered too quickly. "Breakup. She has nowhere to go. She needs stability." But something about the way he said it felt off, too smooth, like a story practiced in advance. I asked how much she needed. My mother hesitated for half a second too long. Then she said the exact amount of my house deposit. That detail shouldn't have mattered, but it did, because I had never told them the exact figure, not even my sister. A chill ran through me. I asked how they knew. My father immediately said, "We're her parents too, we discuss things." But my sister wasn't the type to discuss financial details with them. She barely talked to them unless she needed something. That was the first crack. I told them again I couldn't do it. My mother's voice hardened. "We already promised her." That sentence landed like a punch. Promised her what? They didn't answer. Instead, my sister finally came home around midnight. She didn't look like someone who had nowhere to go. She was wearing new clothes, her nails were freshly done, and she had a shopping bag from a store I knew she couldn't normally afford. She saw me in the hallway and froze for a second. Then she smiled, not guilty, not desperate, calm. That's when I started paying attention. Over the next few days, I started noticing inconsistencies. My sister was supposedly in crisis, but she was gone most of the day. When I asked where she stayed, she said friends, but never gave names. My mother kept pushing me to just transfer it already, like the urgency was constant, even though nothing visibly urgent was happening. And my father avoided eye contact entirely. Then I checked something I shouldn't have. Our shared family insurance portal. My sister had added a new address 2 months ago. It wasn't a friend's place. It was a long-term rental in a different district. Paid in advance, 3 months. My stomach dropped. If she had money for that, she didn't need my deposit. So why were my parents insisting she did? That night, I confronted her directly. She didn't even deny it. Instead, she sighed like I was being difficult. "You don't understand the situation," she said. That phrase again. Everyone in my family kept telling me that. I asked her what situation requires my entire future savings. She finally looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom and Dad are trying to fix something. I'm just part of it." That was the first time I felt real fear, because she wasn't denying the manipulation. She was acknowledging it, just not explaining it. The next morning, I went to the bank. I asked for a full statement on my deposit account. The banker hesitated before printing it. That hesitation told me everything before I even saw the paper. There had been inquiries, 2 weeks ago, someone had attempted to initiate a partial transfer authorization, not me. My father's name was listed in the notes as authorized family contact. My hands went cold. I had never authorized that, which meant they had already tried to access my money without telling me. I went home immediately. This time I didn't ask questions gently. I demanded answers. The living room went silent again, but differently this time. Heavier, defensive. My father finally snapped. Are trying to save this family. That was the first honest sentence anyone had said, but it still didn't explain anything. Then my mother broke, not dramatically, just suddenly tired like she had been holding something in for too long. It's not just your sister, she said quietly, and that's when everything shifted. She explained it in pieces. At first, it didn't make sense. Late mortgage payments, debt restructuring, pressure from lenders, threats of losing the house. Our house. The same house I thought was stable. The same house I grew up in. They had been struggling for over a year, and they hadn't told me. Instead, they had been quietly shifting financial burdens around, hoping things would stabilize. But they didn't. And now they were behind on payments again. That's why they needed my deposit, not for my sister, for them. My sister wasn't in crisis because of a breakup. She was in crisis because she had already been pulled into their financial mess months ago. She looked at me, finally dropping the calm act. I already used my credit to help them once, she said. Now I'm stuck. That hit me harder than anything, because suddenly her strange behavior made sense. The rental, the secrecy, the avoidance. She had been covering for them too, but there was still something missing. I asked the obvious question. If this is about the mortgage, why lie about it? My father didn't answer immediately. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. Because we already used part of your deposit as a guarantee. Silence. I thought I misunderstood him, but he repeated it. They had used my savings as collateral for a restructuring agreement without telling me, not spent it, but legally tied it, which meant I couldn't even fully withdraw it anymore without triggering consequences I didn't understand. My entire body went numb. They hadn't just asked for my future. They had already used it, and I hadn't even known. I walked out of the house that night without saying anything. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't breathe in that place anymore. Over the next few days, I started digging on my own. Loan documents, banknotes, anything I could request, and slowly the truth became clearer. My parents had been making desperate financial decisions for months, and my sister, instead of being a victim or a villain, had been absorbed into their survival strategy. Each of them had been making sacrifices, but none of them told me, because telling me would have collapsed everything. And I realized something even worse. They didn't think they were doing anything wrong. They thought family meant shared burden regardless of consent, but what they had actually done was erase mine. The final confirmation came when I spoke to the bank manager directly. He said something I'll never forget. Your account was flagged because multiple family-linked liabilities are now tied to it. If repayments fail, your funds will be the first recovery source. My house deposit wasn't just gone. It was already marked, waiting, like it belonged to someone else's failure. That night, my sister called me. For the first time, she didn't sound defensive, just tired. I didn't want it to be like this, she said. I asked her why she never told me. There was a long pause, then she said, because they kept saying you were the only one who could still get out. That sentence stuck with me longer than anything else, because suddenly I understood what this was really about. Not favoritism, not manipulation in the simple sense. Fear. My parents had been drowning financially and trying to keep the family afloat by redistributing pressure onto whoever still had stability left. And I was the last stable point. My savings weren't just money to them. They were the last exit strategy. But what they didn't understand was that in taking it without consent, they had destroyed the very trust that might have saved us. I didn't give them the deposit, but I also didn't get my clean break, because it was already entangled in their debts. Months later, I still get updates from the bank, slow, formal notices about linked liabilities. My sister moved out again. My parents barely speak to me unless it's about finances. And I learned something I didn't want to know. Sometimes a family doesn't fall apart because of betrayal in the obvious sense. Sometimes it falls apart because everyone thinks they are the one holding it together, and no one notices who they're pulling down in the process. Even now, I keep thinking about that first sentence. We need you to transfer your house deposit to your sister. That wasn't the start of the problem. It was just the moment I finally saw it clearly.